Welcome to Breaking Ground. I'm your host, Devin Kulka. On this show, we meet with industry leaders in the design, construction, and real estate industries. Today's guest is Scott Barone, principal and founder of Barone Management. We're going to talk about how Scott brought his company from a small general contracting company to now launching their first fund. Really excited for the show. Today we've got Scott Barone, founder and principal of Barone Management. You have completed over 1 million square feet in the New York City, New York area, and you got $500,000 in active development. But you weren't always a developer. You started off as that small GC and you worked your ass off to get to where you are today. So I want to take it back a little bit to first ask you, did you ever have that vision of, did you want to be a developer, or you didn't even see that far?
No, not even remotely close to that far ahead. I started the company in '99, which makes me feel a lot older than I hope I look. And it was essentially a bag of tools and a pickup truck. And my goal at the time was to eat to stay alive. And I spent the next 7 or 8 years building up a real solid client base, but always build for others. And I had never owned a piece of real estate besides the house I was currently building at that time to live in. Nothing speculative or not active development. And in 2008, so I guess that's, what's the math on that? 9 years after I started the business, or no, 7 years. I'm doing the math wrong here. We were hired to build as general contractor, fee-based, a residential apartment building in Tribeca. We pulled permits. 3 weeks later, Lehman Brothers goes off the edge. The world is on hold. And that was not a good time to be a fee-based general contractor. I was building a house. My wife was pregnant with our first, and I was worried about how to put food on the table. One of my subcontractors at the time came to me and said, I am personal friends and have invested in a couple of deals with a guy by the name of Sam Chang, who I didn't know who he was at the time, but turns out he was the budget hotel king of New York. At the time, Sam had built, I think, 60 hotels in Manhattan, and at this point has probably completed well over 100. And he said, if we can get the site, Sam will allow you to build it as GC, and we can invest in the real estate. And at the time, I was just worried about the build. I wanted to keep bread on the table, essentially. The family that owned the property had owned this piece of real estate and various other ones in that neighborhood for going back to the 60s. They weren't inclined to sell, but they were inclined to do a 99-year ground lease. I met with Sam. Sam barks off a bunch of business terms. I'm a real old school contractor at the time. I got a pencil from behind my ear and I got a piece of cardboard I'll never forget from a Dunkin' Donuts box.
And no formal education, right? Like,
I barely made it out of high school.
Yeah.
And everything I know at this point in my life, I've taught myself or learned from others' successes or mistakes. And Sam barks off a bunch of terms. I mark them all down. X amount of dollars a year in rent, X amount of increases, fair market resets. Sam goes away, and I turn to John, who's my partner who worked for me at the time, and I said, John, what the hell is a 99-year ground lease? He says, I have no idea. And we did a little bit of homework, and then did a lot of hard work negotiating in between Sam Chang and the family that had owned the realty, and still does own the underlying real estate. It's the Ponte family. They were old school garbage guys from 1,000 years ago. Negotiated a 99-year ground lease, and it took 6 months to do it. I've always said 1 month because Sam is a hard-nosed businessman, 1 month because Vinny Ponte is a hard-nosed businessman, and 4 months because I did not know what the hell I was doing. But we got it done, and the market turned very quickly. All right, we had started building 2 hotels on the site. I had never known anything about a hotel except that I like to stay in hotels. And there was no construction financing available at the time. We were building one hotel fronting onto Hudson Street, one onto Renwick. We had finished the foundation on Renwick. We were building out of all cash. And I was going to run out of money at some point, and probably so was Sam, because although he was a very established guy, he had 6 different construction lenders go under on him during the crisis.
Ouch.
And he was feeding holes with cash.
Yeah.
It was really a question of who was going to tap out first. And then the market turned real quick, and we were able to forward sell our interests in the ground lease to a private equity firm out of London who wanted us to not build 2 buildings, but build one large connected one. And speaking quite candidly, there's been a couple of articles written on it over the years. We hit windfall profits. We were better at being lucky than at being smart in that instance. And at that point, Sam then turned to me and said, "This was great. You did a phenomenal job. You need to go out and find 1031 exchanges." And I said, "Okay." Sam went away, and I turned to John. I said, "John, what the hell is a 1031 exchange?" And we did some homework, and said, "Oh man, we have to figure this out." And we went on a real solid buying tear when there was still good value to be had in the market prior to the last run-up. We acquired a bunch more stuff with Sam that we developed, and we acquired some stuff on our own that we developed and we're still holding. And I have not built for anyone else since this story began, and never will again.
I remember we first met, you said third-party construction is death by 1,000 cuts. It is a tough industry. Now, when you invested in that first project, was that like rolling your construction management fee and your GC fee in, or did you bring capital into
There was no construction management fee. There was no GC fee. I was all sweat equity and building at true cost.
And at that point, you said you got your wife, you're building a house, you really went all in on this. You saw the opportunity, your back was against the wall, and you said, "Fuck it, I'm in."
If I was going down, I was going down in flames.
I like it. Sometimes you gotta just pick up your pants and push the chips in.
Not sometimes, every time.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to be in, don't step up to the table.
I like it. And so what year was this when you completed that?
Let's see. We finished the forward sale in 12. So that puts us, I guess it was a 4-year cycle. That hotel is now the Arlo Hudson Square, which is 325 rooms. And, out of that generation of projects, we went on a mostly hotel tear because it was still very closely assisted with Sam at the time. We were learning at the altar of one of the guys who was, the most successful hotel developer in the history of the city, for sure. Probably one of the most dollar-for-dollar successful developers since I'm alive.
Absolutely.
And we did 6 more hotels in quick succession. Exited all of them with the exception of one that we still hold. Actually, 2 that we still hold. One in partnership with Sam, one that I own in a partnership with a family member of mine. And that's it. We've pretty much been out of the hotel game since then. I would like to say that it was foresight that COVID was coming, but it wasn't. It was not wanting to be pegged into one asset class. We started branching out from there. We've touched pretty much every asset class at this point, with the exception of residential condominium. Specifically because I don't really love the ethos of selling real estate unless you have to. I don't like being pegged to a business cycle that hard. If you're in any variety of commercial real estate or residential multifamily rentals, if you open into a situation like we're in right now, you may rent for less, or in certain instances like COVID, far less than you hoped you were going to, but you still have a viable business model. If you open into something that was like a post-Lehman crisis where there was just no mortgages available for residential condo buyers, you don't have a business model anymore. You're toast. It's not a matter of, okay, how much less are you going to make? You're going to get wiped. And you're looking at some of the guys that were doing an oversupply of residential luxury condo in the city right now are not having a good run of it.
You're getting hurt.
Yeah, and they're going to get hurt for an extended period of time.
So you said, something that I think is really powerful is the fact that you saw an opportunity and you acted on that opportunity, all in, not stepping down. I think that's important for the listeners. You don't get that opportunity every day to be on the equity side of a project like that.
Nope.
And don't pass up on an opportunity. They come few and far between when you're earlier on in
Yep.
your career, and I think that's really powerful. We talked about condos, multifamily. One thing I know about you guys is that you guys are, for the most part, asset agnostic. If it makes money, it makes money. And these days, you've been doing these charter school deals. How did that fall into your plate? How does that even happen? I know you didn't go out there looking for charter schools.
No. In 2018, actually, first week of January of 18, we went into contract to purchase a former parochial school property in downtown Jamaica. It was 70,000 square foot former high school for girls that had been there for over 100 years, and 2 large residential development assemblages. We knew we were buying very well, went into contract, closed, quickly parsed off the residential multifamily sites to another developer who was willing to pay us what we felt was far more than they were worth. And we kept the school. So we're sitting with 70,000 square feet of historically, architecturally beautiful bricks, but it didn't want to be anything except the school. So we needed to figure it out. It was never going to be up to New York City School Construction Authority standards because they have very top-heavy standards and they don't want to come into an old building. So the next logical step was charter school. We were lucky enough to be introduced through another attorney to the preeminent charter school attorney in New York City. And we got a crash course in what it takes to be a charter school landlord. It's worked out phenomenally well. We're now sitting here in 2021. We have a 2-school campus on that site, 1 school in the A building, 1 school in the B building. We're stabilized, cash flowing, and it wasn't just very economically rewarding, it was a feel-good project.
You're doing something good for the community.
We've sort of, and it's not a phrase that I've coined, it's been out there, you're able to do good while doing good. All right, this was our sort of first taste of social impact investing,
I like
which is
it.
the phrase. And if you can make a lot of money and do the right thing at the same time, well, you should try and do that every day.
It's a double win.
Yeah, so then from there, we really liked the business model, and we entered very heavily into the market. The people that run charter schools are not real estate people, they're not construction people, the same way that I'm not an educator. I have 3 kids at home, I can barely handle those 3. You put me in a classroom with 30 kids,
No shot.
but either them or I are not making it out alive.
You are.
Right? They have this, state funding that is, I don't want to call it overly robust, but it's market rate as long as you do your job the right way, and as long as you provide the school with a good program. And they know how to run a school. They know how to educate kids. They know how to recruit and train teachers. They don't know how to go out, acquire real estate. In many instances, build a ground-up building. We know how to do that. So, as it currently stands, we've got 2 schools in occupancy, the Jamaica ones that I noticed. We have one under active ground-up development right now in Elmhurst, Queens, one under active ground-up development in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, one under active ground-up development in Long Island City, Queens, and we have 2 more that we have signed letters of intent on where we're finishing up our real estate acquisition. So by the end of calendar year 2021, we'll have 7 schools, if not more, in the portfolio.
And how do you finance these deals? Is there state grant money? Is it institutional lenders? I feel like that there's only a certain amount of lenders that are out there that are willing to lend to a development such as this.
Yeah, listen, we've been very, very fortunate. We have one great banking relationship with Metropolitan Commercial Bank, who is now what I would call our best relationship lender. They've lent on our Jamaica asset. They've lent on for the construction on our Elmhurst, and they'll more than likely be our lender on the Long Island City piece, which we're currently building out of cash right now. We just wanted to get it a little further along. It's institutional by way of they are a New York Stock Exchange traded bank. All right, you need an educated lender who understands not just the New York City market, but the business model. And they do, all right? I've had a lot of successes on ground leases, all right? And developing a charter school is somewhat similar with lenders as to developing on a ground lease. There are just certain guys that won't touch it because they don't understand it. So if you're going to develop building XYZ on 123 Main Street, all right, if there's 200 lenders in the market for construction for whatever that product is, 50 of them will be there for a ground lease deal. By the same math, 50 of them will be there for a charter school deal. You just need somebody that's a little bit more educated on the sector.
And I think something you kind of breezed over is the fact that you have a long-standing relationship with them. So when you bring a project to them or a deal to them, they trust you, and that trust goes a long, long way. At the end of the day, a bank or a lender is in the business of lending but mitigating risk.
Right.
And then you've already proven to them that you execute, and so that goes a long way. Get your banking relationships in place, get your lending relationships in place, and gain that trust.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of turned a corner about, let's say 3 or 4 years ago, where the ethos, and when you're early on in your career as a developer, you will beg, borrow, do whatever is necessary to even get the attention of a bank, all right, and they will not want to lend to you. And then you sort of hit that credibility crest and the wave starts breaking in your direction, where there is not a week that goes by that 2 or 3 different lenders don't reach out direct saying, hey, what do you got going on? Can we do something with you? And 7 times out of 10 that answer is no, because we'd like to deal with the guys that we like to deal with. I'm a relationship guy at the end of the day.
And most business is always done on relationships. It's who you know and who you have that relationship with. I know for the longest time you guys really put all your money into the deal on the equity sides and didn't really take in any LP money, but that's starting to change now. So first, why?
Why? Candidly, 2 reasons. Scale and COVID. The scale one's easier to speak to from a macro level. So that Jamaica deal that I referenced in 2018, we had a lot of projects that we were finishing on but weren't finished yet. So when it was time to close, I was looking at our capital stack, which is our money, and said, this is going to get a little tight if something doesn't go right. So I made 3 phone calls to 3 very good friends who had for years said, please let me invest with you, and I said, sorry. All right, so it's, we call it the friends and family barbecue list. If you had not been to a barbecue in my backyard, you were not going to be invited. We made 3 phone calls, we had 3 investors, and all very de minimis amounts of money relative to the size of the project. We just wanted to free up a little liquidity. And we did phenomenally well for them, all right, and ourselves in return. And as we looked at the next project out, it was like, you know what, maybe we should start enhancing in small ways like this. But it was, again, true friends and family only, not like a friend of a friend knows a guy. That was just never going to happen. So COVID happens. And in June, I read an article about crowdfunding. All right. So I had traditionally shied away from institutional level investment since the first day that we met with the first institutional fund that wanted to talk to us on our initial Hudson Street project with Sam. And I got every time I get in a room with one of those guys, not to say anything bad about them, a lot of them are very nice people. I'm personal friends with a couple. When I was growing up, my father was a sweetheart of a guy, good businessman, but not a great businessman. All right, a great person more than anything else. He loved to gamble. So he walked me onto the casino floor at Resorts International in Atlantic City when I was 17 years old. Stopped me, shouldn't have been walking me onto the casino floor, obviously, to go play craps. Turns to me and goes, I always want you to remember 2 things. They will always have more time than you, and they will always have more money than you. every time I'm about to do a deal with an institutional level partner for equity, that resonates in my mind, and I push away from the table and say no thank you. Simply because I don't want to say that I'm a control freak, but I know how to do things my way. And the minute somebody else starts telling me, well, no, you're going to do it my way, it's a bad marriage. So what interested me about the crowdfunding aspect, and we started doing some homework, was that you're making the approach to capital investment to a much smaller person. All right, and I remember what it was like to be a small person and want access to opportunity. It also puts us as the sponsor in a position where we have the ability to do things our way. You're 100% responsible for these people's money, and you treat anybody else's money better than your own in every instance. But you're not really answering to them. It was, okay, here is our business plan. We're going to execute on this. Provided that we're executing on this, we're going to pay you a return. You're going to make money. We're going to make money. Everybody's happy. I don't need to consult with you about what color the paint needs to be in the lobby of the building. I don't have the patience for that.
They just want their returns.
Exactly. So we did it on our Elmhurst project. We'd owned the property at that point for 2 years. We had taken it through a zoning action to get a school permitted in an M zone. We were actively under construction. I think we'd actually just closed our construction loan, and we had like a $13 million equity requirement. We already paid in 50% of that. So it was a question of, do we want to put in another $6.5 million for around $6.8 million of our own, or do we want to keep that money liquid to buy stuff at what feels like, if not the bottom, close to the bottom as a result of COVID? And we did it, and it worked out phenomenally well. We did a webinar from the basement of my house, all right? And we raised $6.8 million in a 47-minute webinar, all right?
It's incredible.
It was great. And the attorneys that handled the private placement memorandum for us, because it's all SEC regulated, you have to, you're playing by the rules, not that we don't always, but there's a different level of underwriting, and CrowdStreet is a great platform. They did 3 months of underwriting on us as a developer before they even considered the project. I think they said only 10% of sponsors that apply to raise money on their platform get approved. So we were happy to clear that threshold, although we knew we were gonna. And the attorneys that handled the PPM for us turned around and said, if you guys do not go out and put together an independent level sponsor capital platform, I don't think I want to represent you anymore because you're not as smart as I think you are. And when somebody that I know is smarter than me tells me that
you got to do this.
It was, so yeah, we've been putting the framework for that together over the last couple of months. I think we're probably going to do a launch in, I want to say mid-March. Everything always tends to drag, so it'll probably be late March by the time we're done. But we see tremendous opportunity out there right now in a number of different asset classes.
And I want to talk about this more, but for the listeners, and if anybody doesn't know what a crowdfunding platform is, it's a platform where any investor or accredited investors can log on and have opportunities to invest in a larger development project that they typically wouldn't have, whether that's $1,000, $10,000, $100,000, $1 million. It opens up that opportunity for investors who just want to play in the real estate market.
Yeah, we had 148 investors total come in. Minimum deal size, which was set by CrowdStreet, not by us, that's their platform, was $25,000 per investor. I think we averaged at about $40,000 per investor. Phenomenal results. We're very happy with it. All right. It was for a guy who's very old school and very tech not savvy, to be able to do this like this was a really interesting thing.
No, it's a great platform for both the developer and the investors. So now you're talking about your first fund, and my understanding there's going to be a lot more compliance and a lot more learning that goes through that. Is that just surrounding yourself by the right people and just absorbing their knowledge?
We've got a really solid team at this point in-house. We are expanding a little bit right now. I think we're going to add 2 more guys to the bench that have some depth in this. We're narrowed the field to a couple of candidates. I think the Crowd Street raise sort of gave us a ramp up to it where we had done, the basic level, reporting for the small friends and family LP that we had taken in. That sort of gave us a ramp to sort of naturally transition into what we're now doing at the Crowd Street level, which is just like a fund, SEC regulated. So that reporting and stuff like that has been more diligent than what we had done prior, and this next level will be more diligent than that. So we're going to stiffen up the bench a little bit, but it's nothing we can't handle. We feel very comfortable with the model.
And are you looking at any specific regions or assets? I know you're asset agnostic, but is this fund going for opportunistic, core? Like what is the fund going to invest in?
Everything we do is opportunistic.
Okay.
I am not the guy that buys a multifamily building at a 7 cap, cleans it up, and tries to sell it at a 5 cap. I don't see a reason to get out of bed for that in the morning. All right, if I'm not hitting home runs, I'm not stepping up to the plate. It will be asset agnostic for sure. It will be market centric. We are New York guys. All right. If I cannot drive to a project and physically lay my eyes on something, if there is a problem, I'm not doing it. I see a ton of stuff that's going on down in Florida right now. I love Florida. I spend a ton of personal time down there, but I don't want to have to get on a plane to go to a construction meeting. Just not doing it.
I feel you. And so the New York City market is in there, and even though they are taking a hit, you're still looking. It's
I want to buy on the hits.
Yeah, I hear you.
As a ground up real estate developer, you don't make your money when the market's high. You make your money when the market's low. It's all about basis at the end of the day. If you get your basis right on an acquisition, you can screw up everything else and still make money. If you get your basis wrong, you could execute everything flawlessly after that and still lose your ass.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you coming in today.
Thank
Always
you.
a pleasure.